So let's start. Welcome everyone to this webinar. We are very happy to have you all today and to see that you have been interested into the webinar series. I am Justine Huget from CLS Group in France, and I will set up the meeting and check that everything is going well. Daniela Requena for Wageningen University in the Netherlands will lead the webinar, supported by Anjul Welskin and also by Martin Herholtz from the same university. And I will let Daniela say a few words about them in a few minutes. We are all part of Earth Observation for Sustainable Developments for the Forest Management Initiative. This is an initiative of the European Space Agency that aims to support international financial institutions and their client states in their development activities at national and international level using the benefits of Earth observations. The initiative was launched in 2020 and will run until 2024. The consortium is led by GAF and contains European and Canadian experts who have experience in the provisions of geospatial data and services for the forest monitoring and management, especially in the REDD+ policy segments. So today we will talk about the biomass mapping, and the session will last about 1 hour. I invite you to ask any question you may have in the chat, and if possible, we will answer to them during the presentation. But there will be questions and answer session at the end of the presentation. So I will now let the floor to Daniela. Thank you, everyone.
Many thanks, Justine, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Daniela Requena Suarez, like Justine said, and today's webinar will focus on mapping forest biomass. And before we start the webinar, we have a question for all of you, which perhaps you can launch now. And we just want to get a sense of who is in the room. So the question is, what region of the world are you joining us from today? You can answer with a country or also with the region itself. For example, today I'm joining from Wageningen. And this question can remain open as until the next one, but we will have a series of interactive questions during the presentation itself. I see that we have people joining from Philippines and also from France. Well, these are the people that you will see today and hear from today. And like Justine said, Anjul Welsink, also from Wageningen University, is joining us under in the background moderation side of things. And just to summarize it, the presentation will have a duration of 1 hour. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So please write your questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. This session will be recorded, meaning that that for those people that would like to hear the webinar again or would like to share it with their colleagues or counterparts, this will be available in the EO4SD Forest Management YouTube channel, and the links to the recordings will also be available in the EO4SD Forest Management website. And finally, please, just a reminder to keep microphones and cameras off, given that this session will be recorded, and also that is basically all of the housekeeping rules. And to provide a little bit of more context of the webinar, like Justine said, this webinar is part of the EO4SD initiative, which is an initiative funded by the European Space Agency, which aims to support international finance institutions and their client states to harness the benefits of Earth observation and their development of operations at national and international level. Specifically, what the project wants is to provide convincing demonstrations regarding the benefit and the utility of Earth observation-based information within the forest management topic. And these services are provided for different geographic regions, and also accounting for specific user-driven needs. The products that are delivered within this project are provided at an operational level, meaning that they have undergone extensive quality control checks and are able to be used in an operational way. And furthermore, the project also seeks to provide capacity building exercises in which there is a transfer of technology as well as knowledge. And one of these exercises is the webinar series that we have been delivering during this year. So here we can see the webinars that have been carried out since the beginning of this year. So within the website, we can have access to already existing materials regarding the basics of Earth observation products and knowledge and methods, which I invite you to check if you want to refresh your knowledge on Earth observation and remote sensing. We have also been holding some webinars on tree cover and forest area mapping or artisanal mining detections, as well as other more generic topics, which the links to the recordings too can be found in the website itself. And coming up, we have 4 more webinars coming up they will be delivered in English or in Spanish, and for some of them, such as this one, subtitles will be provided in French. And I suggest that if any of these are of your interest, please, you can go into the website and already sign up to many of them. And that reminds me that we have a second question, and the second question is, have you joined a previous EO4SD forest management webinar? So I see that the answers are varying. We have one answer that has said yes and the other one that has said no so far, but this gives us insight into whether you are coming from communications that we've had within the project itself, or also within our social media channels, or maybe a colleague referred you to this webinar. But anyways, I suggest that you look into the upcoming webinars that we have and join if it's of your interest. So a summary of this webinar itself, so we will start with an introduction to the use cases, and then we will share the biomass for forest products, the forest biomass products in brief. Afterwards, we'll go into the product description where we will talk about the underlying Earth observation data and additional sources of information. And finally, we will have an explanation about how biomass maps can be used within forest management schemes. And we will finalize the webinar with a questions and answers session. So, like I said before, within forest biomass, the main objectives of this webinar is to demonstrate and explain how Earth observation products can support in the monitoring of forest biomass, and to also introduce the audience to the underlying data and methods behind the global biomass map that we use, and also its local calibration. And finally, to discuss and demonstrate the possible uses of biomass maps for forest monitoring purposes. So to introduce the use cases to which these forest biomass maps have been or are currently being worked on. Like I said before, the project is partnered with around a dozen programs, and most of which are financed by international financing institutions such as the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank. The EO4SD forest management project has had 2 phases. Currently, we're in phase 2. And during phase 1 and now phase 2, the consortium has been delivering a diverse range of products, one of which is forest biomass. And within within the project themselves, the integration of such projects, such products into the program is a key focus. So in the image in this slide, we can see the countries that are involved with the programs that are collaborating with EO4SD forest management. So for the forest biomass maps, currently we are looking into two use cases. One of them is located in the Amazon River Basin, and the other one is located in the Congo River Basin. For the Amazon River Basin, forest biomass will be provided for the Putumayo-Isa River Basin, which is a sub-basin in the Amazon, and it's the one in purple in the image to the left. And then for the Republic of the Congo, the forest biomass map will be provided for the Sanga and Likwala departments in the Republic of the Congo. In the Amazon, we are collaborating with the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes Initiative, which is one of the largest regional programs in the Amazon, and it's currently funded by the Global Environmental Facility, the GEF, and led by the World Bank. This program is the objective of this program is to implement a regional approach to improve the integrated landscape management and ecosystem conservation of the Amazon region. As we all know, the Amazon basin is home to one of the highest biodiversity hotspots in the world, as well as it covers different types of forest types, which are mostly very high biomass, meaning that they have a large effect in the mitigation of climate change. So this program aims to promote a collaboration and engagement along key matters between country representatives. And for these key matters can range from watershed protection to indigenous governance, to the management of protected areas or forest conservation, as well as to promoting sustainable and inclusive value chains for land and water and natural resources. And like I said before, within this program is at an Amazon basin level, but of course, one of the areas that they're currently focusing on is on the Putumayo-Isa River Basin, which is a transboundary site that covers some areas of Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, making it a great example and a great area to actually move forward with the regional approach management that they are seeking or working towards. The second use case is set in the Republic of the Congo, and it's called the RED Plus Emissions Reductions Program, ERP, in the Sanga and Likwala departments and it's also led by the World Bank. Similar to the Putumayo-Isa River Basin, the Sanga and Likwala departments have high areas of forest and also forest biomass. And the activities within the ERP project aim to support forestry companies as they move towards low environmental impact logging, and also working towards reducing emissions from palm groves conversion, as well as improving the management of protected forests. So both areas are areas with high amounts of forest and also high amounts of forest biomass, and as well as with a lot of activities in and surrounding these areas that might benefit from some forest biomass monitoring. So now I have two questions, and I think that for the audience, and the first one is, what is your field of expertise? Are you currently working in forest management, or do you come from a forestry company? Do you work for a government? Do you have a background in remote sensing or geoinformatics? And the second, and perhaps a follow-up question that can still that I can ask while this question remains live is if you have ever used or are currently using forest biomass maps. And there are two options, yes and no, but of course, if the option is other, please, you can type your specific circumstance in the chat. So I see we have the majority of people are already using forest biomass maps, but of course we have people that are currently not using, and we will talk not only about the methods behind this product, but also we want to discuss today the current limitations that people might face when working with forest biomass maps. So to give a bit of a summary about the products that will be delivered in the phase 2 of this project, Martin afterwards will give a bit more detail, but first I wanted to show how the products will look like. And these products, the ones that I'm showing, are forest biomass maps that were delivered during phase 1. And they consist of forest biomass for the year of 2018. In the left, we can see for the Sanga and Likuala departments in the Republic of the Congo. And then in the right, we can see the Putumayo Isa River Basin in the Amazon Basin. So here we can see that biomass is shown in bins of different colors. However, the provision of biomass that we deliver are actually continuous variable values of above ground biomass. It has been grouped only for visualization purposes, but what we provide is continuous values of AGB. And for phase 2, we will be providing them for the year 2020. And we define AGB, as it is most commonly known, as a dry matter of living woody mass, including tree stems, barks, and branches, and excluding tree stumps and roots. Both products have a resolution of 100 meters, a spatial resolution of 100 meters. And since the map is produced for forested areas, then water bodies and also urban areas are masked out as 0. Let's see. And we are also, this information is also accompanied by an uncertainty layer in which we can give pixel level uncertainties, also continuously derived for each biomass pixel. And the resolution is the same, 100, the spatial resolution is of 100 meters. So here, this is just a close-up of the upper region of the Putumayo Isa River Basin for the year 2018. And we can see how the map can give us indication of where the higher areas of biomass are, as well as areas with lower biomass. And at the same time, we can also see the uncertainties behind the map's biomass estimation. So these are how the products look like. They are currently being worked for the year 2020 and will be provided for both ASL and ERP projects in the coming year. But now I would like to go for the product description, and for this, I think that Martin has already turned on his camera, so the floor is yours, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Also, my warm welcome from my side today to the webinar audience on biomass mapping. So I'm going to continue along the lines what was discussed and describe a bit more detail on how the product was generated, what's behind it, so you better understand it, but then also how it can be used. And I will have a couple of examples on how that could look like. So the background is, and in this project, we take advantage that biomass mapping using space-based data, satellite data, and so on is really evolving. It's an evolving field. There are several satellite missions that have the particular target, in fact, to improve the estimation of above ground forest biomass that are in space. And several space agencies are producing these biomass mapping products. And the one we have been using here is from ESA Biomass CCI. So it's the Biomass Climate Change Initiative dataset, which provides above ground biomass for different epochs. It's derived mostly from Sentinel-1 and JAXA's ALOS basically is L-band radar data. So the maps are largely based on radar-based satellite observations, which have then been converted through a regionally calibrated algorithms into biomass. And then the outcome is a global above-ground biomass map at 100 by 100 meter resolution, so that's hectare scale. More information about the project is available. The data are also available globally, free of charge. So if you have an interest to look into that also for other regions, that's definitely possible. So then if you go a bit more into the product specification, I already mentioned it's hectare scale. It has a spatial coverage for the regions that mentioned. Uses the standard projection. As already said, it's live woody biomass, and it's biomass. So if you want to use it for carbon estimation, you can convert it using there's an IPC conversion factor. That's more the default. If you feel like you have more localized carbon conversion factors, tier 2 or something like that, then you also apply that. But converting it to carbon by a factor of 0.47 is a common way of doing it. And there's also this uncertainty layer, it was already shown. So let's then go a bit into more like how the map was actually generated. And what is important to say is that the ESA CCI map is available free of charge, but we know that this is a global product, and that global product applies an estimation on the global level, but we want to apply it locally or nationally. And know that there's always a bit of a trade-off with these global maps being, global in nature, being somewhat globally consistent, but the applicability to local conditions is affected by uncertainties. So, and that is why we are doing an additional adjustment of the data to reduce the errors. And the key thing we actually want to reduce is bias, so systematic deviation. And there is basically a bias adjusted algorithm that's being applied. It's also an open source tool that's available. And of course, it requires reference data. Reference data can come from plots, measured plots, but also airborne, high quality LiDAR-based estimations and so on. So, but basically what we want to do and what we did is to provide a product that is basically regionally tuned. So we're not taking the global map off the shelf. We are actually applying it or in a calibration algorithm to link it to local conditions. And that is being documented. So there is a relatively large plot database for the whole globe that has been available. So the difference between the plot data and the map data have been assessed globally. We wanted to have a good representation of all kinds of different forest and forest ecological conditions. And then basically we apply a tool that basically models the difference between the plot and the map data and adjusts for these purposes. And of course, the more regional plot and reference data sources one has, the easier that can be done now. So for example, for adjusting the map for the Putumayo region in the corner between Brazil, Ecuador, and Peru, we relied a lot on data from Brazil, for example, included some data from Peru as well. And for the Congo basin, there are several other data sources that are available. So you have some regional data that went basically into that. The actual bias adjustment is done using a tool called Plot to Map. There is, first of all, you make these, you process the map data, you process the plot data, including an assessment of the biomass estimation uncertainties. And then you basically harmonize it and you model the bias and you account for different data sources and the error sources as part of that. Just a couple of things and steps that have been done, and maybe that can go into a bit more detail that basically results, and that's what you see here a bit in the right-hand figure. So basically you see a map that shows a smaller systematic deviation across the biomass range in the plot to map data comparisons. So you adjust for local conditions. And again, for the people who are technically very interested in that, there are scientific publications that are available, also open source for people to read. It's one of the previous slides. Okay, so just to get you a bit your understanding, that's how the map and the map estimations were provided. Again, we're talking about hectare scale biomass estimates for these different regions. And of course, if you're interested more, you can also in the question and answer session afterwards. I would now like to talk a little bit about then potential applications, so how this map can be then used for various purposes. And I would like to start with quite an interesting development. So what we have seen across the tropics is that many tropical countries have done recent efforts in measuring their forests through plot-based national forest inventories. So a lot of countries have ongoing efforts. They're relatively recent. These are often design-based forest inventories that cover the whole country or significant parts of the country. And so that's useful. That's usually quite a good source of information, also for the kind of work we're talking about here. The thing about national forest inventories, they are designed to provide good estimates on the national level, less so on the local level. And that's where the integration of any kind of plot-based biomass estimates for national forest inventories with space-based data can help to actually provide more localized maps or estimates of biomass. So that's one of the things, because what we see if we compare space-based biomass data and country biomass data, that for the countries who do have recent NFIs, just on the national level, if you look at the average biomass, we do find a relative good relationship. Of course, there's always scatter, and that scatter is, there's still some remaining uncertainties, but in general, we see a kind of a convergence of estimations of these rather independent data sources. And that's actually very good to see, and that's actually also the way we want to go. So then more specifically, so if you have a biomass map, how can one actually then use it for local or regional purposes? Well, what you can do is you can do a direct estimation of biomass or even change in case you don't have any NFI or any kind of plot measurement. So if you have nothing else in terms of data, that is a possibility that you have. I've just showed in the previous slides that regions where you have absolutely no plot measurements are becoming increasingly rare in the tropics. So that's a situation that we don't find a lot, but it can still happen. And that's an opportunity in absence of any data. You can use the map data that are available. What is a more feasible option, also related to what I said before, is that if you have national forest inventory or any kind of plot data, you can integrate both to improve the precision for subnational estimation of above-ground biomass, or carbon stocks, and eventually emission factors. So that is, for example, for countries that want to have more localized estimations, or we, for example, have countries they weren't able to complete the NFI completely. So there was only, they had a design to do a certain number of plots. At the end, they managed to do only maybe 50% of them. And that's where you can integrate with the biomass map to fill in for that. So that's one of the options. You can help to define more efficient NFI sampling designs. For example, in particular for countries who are struggling to update and remeasure the NFI. So you say, like, you can put more sampling in areas where the Earth observation would tell you, well, we see active change there, we see a lot of changes there, and or we have, on the other hand, we have relatively stable conditions in terms of forest. So maybe our measurement intensity doesn't have to be on the highest level. I think there's also value in doing this kind of work, in sharing information to give some feedback to the global biomass map producers, so they know where the errors are and what the errors are, so you can prove it. You can use it for independent verification purposes. So basically you have local biomass estimates based on whatever airborne LiDAR or plot data, and you just want to have an independent comparison with using maybe some of the global data sets. So there's different ways on how it can be done, and there's actually, that's quite an evolving field, because both on the ground and space-based biomass estimations have been improving over the recent years, and there's quite some ongoing efforts in the research domain, but also in the application domain, the level of countries or on the level of carbon projects and so on, where all of these kind of things are developed a bit further. So let's look a bit more into some concrete case studies, and there's one from the region, which is actually quite nice. So it is for Peru. Peru is currently doing a national forest inventory, but that's one of these cases. They have not been able to complete the whole national forest inventory. So basically what they're doing is they're using the biomass map or integration of the biomass map and the national forest inventory efforts to improve the precision of their national and subnational biomass estimation. This has also been documented and shown, and that is a methodology that can also be replicated or is currently being replicated in other studies. So there is similar work that looks into Tanzania and in Mozambique, for example, where this approaches, it's mostly also finding statistical approaches for these integrations, which is basically ongoing. We have also nice cases where maps actually are able to show us areas of high carbon stocks. You get the nice thing you get about maps is you get a spatial distribution of biomass. So for identifying, for example, areas of high carbon stocks, which are basically of particular value, or you can overlay these high carbon stock maps with other data sets, for example, those of high biodiversity value, or to look at you can overlay your deforestation data to see where are my hotspots of deforestation over the biomass map, and these kind of things, that you can get a bit more of a spatial depiction on where things are happening. And that's often quite useful for policy development or planning targeted interventions kind of purposes. Another interesting application is, of course, you can combine the biomass maps with more spatially explicit data of forest disturbances. We know there's a particular interest for these near real-time forest disturbance alerts that are available, that are also part of this project. That have been provided to these various case studies. And by combining these alerts with spatially explicit biomass estimation, you can also get first order estimations of local carbon losses. There's also been some case studies that have started to show that. So this is more for the rapid estimation, first order estimations of not only forest disturbances, but also the amount of carbon, local carbon that's been affected by that. And for that, you need a biomass map. You can't easily do that just based on plot data. So basically, there are several examples on how you could think about if you have a good locally and regionally calibrated biomass map and how you can integrate it into various applications. But at the end, the way it is integrated and the way it's used depends on specific needs and motivation. So where specifically can the biomass help? Can it really improve precision? Can it really fill data gaps? And so there is not necessarily a recipe that kind of all fits, one size fits all solution. So it's a bit of a case-by-case strategy, and that's why also we have going a bit in different ways for our different case studies. And this partnership between the people doing space-based biomass estimation or the integration between plot and biomass data and the countries and the users is actually quite important. And we are aware that it's an evolving field. There's a lot happening right now, and there's a need for continuous engagement to see where technology is going, how estimations are improving, because that will have direct implications on the uptake of that data. And I think it's important to have that dialogue also between the users and the producers to eventually improve the estimation. I can say, for example, maybe some of you are aware of the Global Forest Observation Initiative that's coordinated out of FAO, working particularly with countries to improve national greenhouse gas inventories in the forest and land use sector. And that topic is quite an important part of the current efforts of the GFOI, the Global Forest Observation Initiative. So if you're interested in maybe getting even more engaged in that, that's definitely one opportunity that's there. Good. With that, I would like to close my overview in terms of how the product was generated and how it relates to specific applications. That then also leads us a little bit to the question and answer session. And while you're getting your questions ready, that you either put in the chat, or you can also speak up at some point. We have 2 more questions that'd be good to have your feedback on. The first one is, in your perspective, what's the main limitation behind the use of forest biomass maps? You already, in the previous poll, people have already indicated some of you have used biomass maps. So what do you think is the biggest stumbling block, the main limitation at the moment? What's the kind of thing? And it'd be good to have some feedback on that. And please feel free to use the poll section again in your Teams browser, so we can try to get a little bit of feedback. And already seeing some responses coming in. There seems to be, well, the lack of examples of integrating between biomass maps and field data. I think that's a very important point. So that's obviously high up on the agenda, but also the lack of good practice guidelines on the use of biomass maps. And that's actually a good point. So the IPCC good practice guidelines used for greenhouse gas inventories has a section on some guidance section on the use of biomass density maps, but that's relatively generic and it's not really up to date on what's happening in the field. It's already a couple of years old, and I agree that more guidance and stuff is needed. So I know we have 4 responses. So we see this clearly. This lack of integration of biomass and field data is the most important thing. So even after a couple of responses, and I hope I was able to explain a bit how we dealt with it in this for this specific project. And but as I also said, there is more that can be done and should be done in that field. Good. Then I suggest we perhaps move on to the next question. And that one is, what improvements would you like to see in the future in the biomass maps? And I think you can, well, this is a typing question, so feel free to put some things in. Of course, we have improvements in, in this, having them more spatially detailed, more up to date, more accurate, and stuff like that. So I think, well, more easily accessible. I mean, there's many things that one could think about. So that was the time maybe to put in your your response. And I see already some things are being provided. I see hotspots areas. I see higher accuracy. Higher spatial resolution, I saw for a moment. And let's see, there's something on input parameters. There's more historical data. I think that's also an important point. So that is, I think, a point that I try to make in the presentation, in the sense that so these biomass maps are also available at the moment back to 2010 at high resolution. There's some efforts also to go a bit earlier, actually. So there is also increasing availability of data, knowing that these satellite missions that are particularly targeted to improve biomass estimation, forest biomass estimations, they're only mostly for the recent years. So there is a tendency of getting higher quality estimates for more recent years than for earlier periods. Good. With that, actually, I would then like to open the floor for also the question and answers.